In Walmart's Who Newville, joy started to grow. For online-only savings sure to steal the show. Tech treats and toys so dazzling and new. Walmart Cyber Monday deal soon ready for you. It's online only with very little time to spare. December 1st will soon be here, so be sure to be there. The Who's are prepared. Are you ready too? A day packed with savings. Amazing! Who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed-sponsored jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth, where we're exploring all sorts of business topics. Experts from around the world join me, your host, Diane Helbig, for a conversation where they share their expertise with all of you. Take what you need when you need it. Featured on Inc.com, Forbes, and MSNBC's Your Business, this podcast is recognized as one of the best podcasts for small business, sales, leadership, social media, and more. When it comes to business, Accelerate Your Business Growth has got it covered. And now on with the show. My guest today is Danielle Hendon. Danielle is the founder of Four Corners CFO, where she brings over a decade of corporate finance experience to small business owners in a way that fits their size and budget. She's passionate about translating big business financial strategies into practical tools for entrepreneurs, helping them boost profit, gain clarity, and build lasting legacies that impact their families and communities. Thanks so much for being here today, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me, Diane.
I'm thrilled to have you here. Finance, one of those topics that,
Don't run away, anyone listening. I promise it's not that bad.
Exactly, right? You're going to smooth it all over for everybody. So here's where I want to start. So there's so many small business owners, who avoid looking at real closely at their numbers because it feels overwhelming.
Yep.
Explain to them, please, if you would, why it's critical to know where you really stand financially, and if you can give them like one simple step that they can take to get started.
I'm actually going to do it in the reverse. I'm going to say just looking at your numbers is the simple step. If that is all anyone listening to this podcast does today, I'm going to call it a win. Just looking at those numbers is your very simple step. They are not scary, I promise. I think the biggest hurdle that a lot of us go through when it comes to numbers, if you're not looking at them, is the self-judgment. We see them as a reflection of our worth, our ability, they're just data. It's just information. But that is also why it's so important to look at them. If you are not looking at your numbers, you don't have a good sense of how your business is doing. You might know your revenue, but if you don't look at the overall picture, you don't know your profit, and you don't know if you're really making money. You might not be able to connect the dots between what's in your bank account and what you thought you sold, because there's so much more that goes on in your business.
Okay, so it's so great. So you said something that, ding, it's a trigger for me. Revenue growth doesn't always mean business success, right? Because, there's revenue and then there's profit.
More money, more problems sometimes.
Yeah, right? Okay, so how can entrepreneurs better understand that profit margin and their revenue streams so they can really make better decisions, right? They can maximize their results without having to work real hard. Mm-hmm.
I would say the first step is knowing that you do have revenue streams. I don't care who you are or what you do, you have more than one sales line item in your business. But I would bet your books have one sales line item in them. So making sure you know what those revenue streams are and talking with your bookkeeper to identify that in your books, because our goal is you just started looking at them, and now that you're looking at them, they need to make sense. So make sure you know what those revenue streams are, and then identify what I like to call your revenue generating costs. If you've ever talked to an accountant, they have probably referred to this as cost of goods sold, but I try to avoid as much accounting language as I can. I know it's a quick turnoff. So think about what is going into generating that revenue. Is it people? Is it products? Is it contractors? Is it processing fees when someone uses a credit card to make a payment? How are you getting from I'm going to provide this thing to I'm going to get paid for it? And what does it take to get there? That is what gets you to profit margin. When you take the price that you're charging and you reduce it by those revenue generating costs, that's the profit that's left. And we call that in accounting, I am going to use a little bit of it, we call it gross profit margin, because there is also something we call net profit margin. At the end of the day, your business has to run, and that involves things that do not generate revenue. It involves a website, it involves a cell phone, it involves paying your internet bill. It involves things that are not going to actually get something sold. They're not going to produce revenue. And you still have to pay those bills and yourself, I hope, while running this business.
Okay. So, it's all good. Is it different for a service business as opposed to a business that sells a product? Or is it?
Honestly, no,
Okay.
but people think it is.
Yeah.
The biggest difference that we find with service-based businesses, and we serve predominantly service-based businesses, is that they don't consider themselves a cost. They don't consider themselves as part of that revenue generating cost. Payroll as a line item often sits in that operating expense section of things. It's part of the overhead that then becomes your net profit margin. But it is your revenue generating cost if you sell a service. It is your biggest revenue generating cost. So if you're doing that calculation we just talked about and you're going, oh, when I take the price minus the cost, I'm like almost the same as the price. No, there's something wrong there. You have people that went into generating that, and time is money. And especially if it's your time, it's very easy as business owners to look past it and think, oh, well, I'm going to pay myself. It's not really a revenue. No. Because at the end of the day, our goal as business owners is to not always be the doer in our business. And you will have to pay somebody else and yourself when that happens.
Okay. So that leads
So
me,
much.
I know, well, because there is so much, right? But that leads me to pricing. Because the other part of that is I think a lot of service-based. So if it's a product, it's a little easier, it's tangible. You can say, well, this is what the raw materials cost, and this is this and that. So you can get closer to this is actually what it costs. But when it's a service, I think it's harder for a lot of service-based businesses to put an accurate value on what they're charging for that service. So, I mean, do you see that, and what do you suggest?
I do, and it's because there's different ways you can charge that people get confused sometimes. You could charge by the hour. You could charge a flat fee price. We work with some law firms that are on contingency basis. But at the end of the day, our recommendation for a service-based business is that you are focusing on what you would charge if it was hourly. So let's say most accountants, you're probably going to see CPAs charging $300 to $500, depending on who they are, an hour. And in that range, I want you, even if you are flat fee, to ask yourself, how long does it take to do this? If it takes 10 hours, then you're going to multiply that by what the hourly would have been. And I want to see your flat fee be somewhere close to that.
I see.
And actually, it should be better than that as you get better in business. The goal of a flat fee is that you as the business get to reap the reward of experience and efficiency.
So, right. So, but that also says to me that it may start out being like 10 hours, but it's going to turn into 6 But you're
And you should still charge that value-based flat fee price.
Right.
Because you put in the sweat equity and the time and the
Right.
energy to get it down to 6.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things I think is really tricky for service bases. They're trading time for dollars when it's not about the time.
You got to get out of it.
Yeah.
Especially as you're longer in business, or even if you just started your business, but you've been in this area of business for 20 years,
Yeah.
you're going to do it so much faster than a brand new person.
Right. Right. So it's not about the time. It's about the result. It's about the output, right?
Yep. All value driven.
Yeah, right. Okay. So now let's talk about hiring, because this is also a really big challenge for small business owners. How can they use financial clarity to know when they're ready to hire, and why is that step so important for long-term growth?
I will say you're ready if you're even thinking about it. If you're having that, it's too much work for me, then you are probably a little behind the 8 ball and you need to start looking. If you're swamped, if you can't keep up with the work, if you're not holding your own personal boundaries in when you're going to work, then you probably need to start looking for some help. What I will say is that help comes in different shapes and sizes. It may not be that your first person is a mini-me doing client-facing work. Your first person might be a VA or an EA that's taking administrative stuff off your plate. They are generally going to be a little bit cheaper than what you would pay for a client-facing person. When you are ready to hire that client-facing person, whether it's a mini-me, an associate, whatever you want to call that person that's going to help you do the doing, I want you to think about how much work you have to give them. And for our clients, we do what's called a break-even analysis. Okay. So we say, how much are we going to pay them? Let's say it's a $50,000 a year salary. That's really low, but we're just going to throw it out there. So let's say it's a $50,000 a year salary. Then I want to know that means they've got about 2,000. Technically, it's 2,080 in a year, but about 2,000 hours in a year that they're going to be able to work. At that rate that we talked about earlier, and I know we said the rates and the hours are not the most important part, the value is. And when you're flat fee pricing, that's true. But you have to know how long things take. And at the rate that you want that person to theoretically be billable, how many hours do you need to give them to cover their salary? How many hours of work has to cover it? And I love this analysis, and I'm trying to explain an Excel spreadsheet in words, and it's not working very well. But what I'm getting at is when you know how many hours it's going to take to cover that salary, it makes the hiring decision so much less scary. When we do this we work with a lot of law firms, enough so that I can tell you when we sit down with a law firm, if they've got 10 hours of work a week to give their new person, they will always break even. And the other 30 are all upside. That's how you grow a business.
Interesting. Okay. I think it's important as well that people hear that it doesn't mean that when you're hiring full time. That
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or even hiring a W2.
They can be contractors.
Yeah. Right.
I will say you have to be careful. There's rules and regulations around who can be a contractor, who can be a W-2, and on top of the actual payroll rules of who controls what and all of that,
right.
I will say depending on your business and how, for me personally, all of my team is W-2, even though they're part-time, and it's because it protects our IP and it protects our process and our training and all of those things. So if you're doing something where you've built out a framework or you've got a book or all of those things, you may want to go a path that protects that aspect of it as well.
Interesting. So there are different things to consider when you're starting to explore hiring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you want them to follow your timeline, your schedule, those are definitely going to start pulling you more into the W-2 realm.
Absolutely. Right. But they don't have to be full-time and benefits.
They don't. I have one on my team who's W-2 and she works 5 hours a week.
Yeah, right. Right. I think that's really valuable because I think, small business owners, they go immediately to, I'm going to bring someone on board full-time, but then I have to be able to cover that cost of a full-time employee and taxes and, this, that, and the other thing. And so that gets overwhelming and scary. So then they don't do it.
And keep in mind, when you're hiring a revenue generating person, they're not going to be revenue generating right away. You have to train them. So you need some buffer in the bank to make sure that you can get through that training period for them to start generating revenue.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. 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 So there's a lot to it. Unfortunately. Having said that, you said something earlier that's really sticking with me, and it's that it's just data and that information is power.
Yes.
Because that is what helps us make intelligent decisions in our business, right? If we don't know, then we're sort of haphazardly making decisions that may or may not be good.
And you don't know where you're going with those decisions.
Right.
I think one of my favorite things that we do as a fractional CFO for clients is setting up a budget and comparing their actuals to that budget. I tell our clients all the time, because budget has a negative connotation, the goal of a budget isn't actually to hit the budget or be limited by the budget. The goal of a budget is to understand why you're not hitting it when the numbers come in differently. There is a story behind those numbers, and that's what our job is. Our job is to say, okay, we didn't hit revenue, but you went on vacation for a week and we know you were bordering on burnout, and like this is going to help prolong your business. We just need to adjust our expectations in the budget a little bit. Or maybe we didn't hit revenue and it's because marketing wasn't going as well, and now we need to make an adjustment and stand with you while you adjust the business so we can get back on track.
Right.
It is not a judgment tool. It is really just a way of understanding.
Yeah, that's huge. That's exactly right. It is not a judgment tool. Yeah, we need to stop thinking of it as one.
Yeah, and it's not a limiting tool either. I have clients where we're like, you're really not spending on marketing. Is there somewhere we should be putting some money to help? Like, you could grow exponentially if we brought more of this stuff on.
Right.
Sometimes it's an eye-opening, hey, we need to spend more in this area.
Yeah, right. That's so great. Danielle, I so appreciate this information. It really does. I mean, you know, it's so human, right? That it really does take the scary out of it. Will you tell the listeners how they can find you, please?
Absolutely. We are going to have a landing page set up just for you guys. So it'll be on our website, the number 4, not the word, the number 4 cornerscfo.com/accelerating your business growth.
Wonderful.
Sorry, accelerate your business growth.
Okay, whichever. They both work, but we'll make sure that's in the show notes. So, excellent. Thank you. And listeners.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. You are who we're doing this for.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, a production of Evergreen Podcasts. Discover more episodes of this podcast and explore others at evergreenpodcast.com. As always, continue to prosper and be curious. And if you're looking to get your sales strategy headed in the right direction, pick up a copy of Succeed Without Selling on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.